Hey, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Hope you guys are doing well. You hear me? I got a new setup. I don't know if you guys noticed, but got a bit of a new setup. Speedy, can you hear me? Connor, can you hear me? All right. So that was a great debate. Great to see everybody here. 6 people here already. Wow. Okay, so just FYI, I got a new setup. This is thanks to you guys. Just before we start, I'm just gonna say that as you guys know, I have a Patreon, and that Patreon um, is essential to help fund this channel and to fund my content generally, but specifically when I cover controversial issues like topics that get demonetized by YouTube. Patreon helps to fund that work. And one of the goals of Patreon was when I hit $250 a month, which I did a couple weeks ago, I would improve my equipment. And the first thing I did was buy a new microphone. This is basically the setup David Dole has, so I'm very proud of it. And I hope you guys find the quality better. I think you'll notice it even more in recorded videos. But in any case, I think it'll be an improvement. And the next step, probably when I get a new computer that can handle the power, I'm going to get a much higher quality camera that can maybe do 4K resolution or something of that sort. My computer would probably melt if I tried to run a camera at that power and at that speed. So, how's everybody doing? I thought that was a very interesting debate. A couple things right off the top. I think Paul Wells, the debate moderator, did very well to criticize Justin Trudeau. Like, not in a partisan manner, not in a unfair manner, but to note like that, that the podium was there, the empty podium was there, which was great, but also that whole, like, why are we doing this without the prime minister? Was like, well, the prime minister just doesn't get to decide when we speak and when we don't. And we don't elect we don't elect presidents here. We elect parliaments. And all 3 of these leaders will likely play a role in the parliament, whether it's as a leading party or as a smaller party. Like, they're going to be playing a role, right? And I think that it was 100% the best way to start this, to let them know that Justin Trudeau had an opportunity to be there, but chose not to. And I think that was a big mistake for Trudeau. One thing that people might suggest is that the debate had a lot of talking over, and maybe Trudeau feels that, hey, if I'm not there, I look like I'm above the fray, right? Like, I look like, May and Scheer and Singh are all bickering, and I'm, Trudeau just trying to solve Canada's issues, doing my own thing. Maybe, but I don't think that's going to work for him. And I think a lot of Canadians are probably going to be disappointed he didn't show up. Canadians took time out from their families and from their things they like to enjoy to watch this debate, to learn more about the options they have. And Justin Trudeau couldn't be there for them. And I think that's, it comes off as disrespectful to me. I don't know what you guys think about that. Well, Vito, the debate you deliberately avoided. Well, that's why people come here, I guess, in part to hear. I watched the debate, so if you didn't watch it, you didn't have to. And if you did, maybe we'll build some more insight. I think that it was a good debate. My general viewpoints, and we'll get into some questions and some comments before, is that Singh did very well. He did extremely well, if I'm being honest. Not only because he had low expectations, and much like Justin Trudeau in 2015, he had low expectations and met them and exceeded them. And that's one of the reasons why he sort of got some momentum early in that election. But I think that he introduced himself to a lot of Canadians who didn't really know who he was. And I feel that he hammered home one thing above all. And this was an opportunity he might not have had if Justin Trudeau was in the debate. As I noted in some of my earlier commentary, Justin Trudeau not being there gave much more space to May and Singh. And specifically for Singh, who has taken a more deeply anti-Scheer and anti-conservative stance, he was able to take this whole debate and demonstrate that he is in opposition to everything Andrew Scheer stands for. And that if you're not a conservative, if you don't like the Conservatives, then Jagmeet Singh is your guy. And Elizabeth May did a little bit of that, but she also agreed with Andrew Scheer on a lot of individual issues. And she has said she would support him in a minority government, at least hypothetically. And Justin Trudeau, who's been very critical of Scheer, of course, wasn't there tonight to do that work. I think he came off very well in that regard. I do agree with what one person said, or a couple people said in the comments. There were some times where he got criticisms and he should have pivoted better to the platform. They said, oh, your tax increases won't raise enough money. He should have noted the $70 billion over 10 years. And that's just from the wealth tax. That doesn't include the closing of loopholes. That doesn't include capital gains. That doesn't include income tax increases. That doesn't include corporate tax increases. It doesn't include any of those things. So I don't think Elizabeth May is accurate in saying that we don't have the money. I mean, maybe it's tight, but I don't think I don't think she was right there, at least not unequivocally. Singh could have done a better job there. I feel Singh could have done a better job pivoting to the platform in a couple places, but this is his first debate, right? Like May's done this a bunch of times. This is Singh's first real deal national debate. And here's the thing, that panel, the panel that spoke at the halfway point and the end point of the debate, unanimously suggested that Jagmeet Singh won this debate. He exceeded expectations. He did what he needed to do in portraying Andrew Scheer and Justin Trudeau as two sides of the same big money coin. He attacked Andrew Scheer, painting him as a conservative, and at least a little bit, he differentiated himself from Elizabeth May and the Greens. Elizabeth May, from my perspective, I don't like Elizabeth May's ideas, but I feel like she was pretty polished. She spoke very well. I think Elizabeth May's experience was Elizabeth May's experience was on display tonight. That she really did show a certain, composure that comes with being on these stages and being a leader of a party for so long, even if it's a small party like the Greens. I still feel she made some big mistakes. She sided with Andrew Scheer against Jagmeet Singh on saying we can't afford dental care. That's BS. We can just choose different priorities. That's a good thing Singh did. He didn't go to the taxes enough, but he did suggest that when we cut corporate welfare, we can pay for the things we need, which is to say that we have different priorities than the liberal conservative, coalition. And I do think that she praised Ronald Reagan, for God's sakes. She praised Chrystia Freeland, who supports dictatorial regimes in Brazil and Ukraine. Elizabeth May tried to double down on her SNC, community service program. Elizabeth May had no response to Jagmeet questioning her on social issues because Jagmeet was 100% honest in what he said, but she was polished. And Andrew Scheer is just awful. I think we can mostly agree on that. His views are awful. His performance wasn't very good. I feel he was lost in a sense because his whole plan is about attacking Justin Trudeau. And you can do that without Trudeau being there, but you have to dial it back a little bit because he isn't there. You have to read the room. And I don't think Scheer did that enough. And I think he probably had the worst performance of the three. Okay, so I'm going to kind of quickly go through up here and see if I can get some questions. If I do miss one, let me. So, Maticus, I sort of answered your question there, like that he needs to do more of the platform. Asher, you said, can you talk a bit more about the criticism from May about Singh's plan? The Greens suggest that while the NDP and the Greens both agree that we have to get to the 1.5 degrees increase or lower, that the NDP didn't set a specific climate target in the way the Greens have. That the NDP has the same goal, but not the metrics to get there. The Greens do have more specificity there. But environmentalists have praised the NDP's plan as a viable green plan, and independent observers have said it's more achievable. And I would suggest that while on certain things, the Green Plan is a bit more clear than Singh's, than the NDP's, as I noted in my piece in the Washington Post, only the NDP's plan integrates social and economic justice within a Green New Deal. And I don't think May offered that. I don't know if her criticism is going to land. Singh's answer wasn't the best, but I think talking about 38% versus 60%, I don't think Canadians are going to grasp that. I don't think that that's something that a general debate audience is going to see as something they can actually manifest in their brain. But that's the root of her criticism, that the NDP's plan, certainly better than the Liberals and Conservatives, she feels it won't reduce emissions enough fast enough. Speedy, yeah, sorry about, yeah, okay, 55 people here. We're about 10 minutes in, and I don't think I've ever, well, 53, sorry, stop leaving, guys. 51, okay, but still, 50 people here this early in the stream, one of the best, totals I've had. Hopefully it'll pick up. Speedy asks a great point there, saying, well, why would May ever work with the Conservatives? It's not like they'll meet their climate goals. And I would agree that you're probably right in saying that, is it a bit academic for us to talk about a Scheer May, coalition, because Scheer won't give May what she wants on the climate. And I think that's fair. But the point is that May would consider it. And here's what, here's how I've noted in videos, and here's what I've noted on social media and others have noted as well, is that Elizabeth May basically said she would work with any political party that would help her meet the climate goal, the 1.5 degree goal. And I don't disagree that that's an important objective. I don't. May is right that we are facing a severe climate emergency. Jagmeet Singh would agree. Justin Trudeau agrees, but then actually doesn't care, right? Like all three of those parties agree. But when saying she would work with the Conservatives to achieve that, a lot of people very reasonably asked, okay, Scheer does give you 1.5. What do you give him? What do you give Andrew Scheer? Do you sell out women? Do you sell out workers? Do you sell out Indigenous people? Do you sell out social programs? Do you privatize healthcare? Do you close the borders to refugees and immigrants? Like, do you discriminate against, certain ethnic groups? Do you tear up, obligations to Indigenous people? Any one of these things, what will you give Andrew Scheer? And the Greens came at me hard. For people who follow me off YouTube, the Greens came after me hard. It's like, how dare you suggest that? But all I was doing was taking May's argument to her logical conclusion. If your overriding goal is 1.5 to stay alive, that's her rhyme, pretty catchy, I have to say, and you're willing to work with anybody to achieve it, it means you're willing to negotiate anything else but that to achieve the 1.5 to stay alive goal. So it's not unreasonable to say, what if Andrew Scheer wants to, ban the rights of gay people to get married? What if? What if he wants to do that? What if he wants to put restrictions on women's rights? Will Elizabeth May agree to that? It's 1.5 to stay alive, no matter what. What will she give up? And the Greens have tried to walk that back a little bit, but that's the logical conclusion. They'll give up anything, any one of our human rights to get that goal. Jagmeet Singh's Green New Deal is different. It's not just about the environment, because the people matter. Not only is it, there's no point in building an ecological, future if it's going to lead to the continued subordination of all but the social and economic elite. We have to build a world that people want to live in and that can live in. And further to that, the only way you get consensus to make the social and economic changes needed to build a new society is by including workers and Indigenous people and various communities. You don't do that just by talking about 1.5 to stay alive. You do that by building a new economy. This is why the Green New Deal in the US and Canada is popular, right? That's the whole point. It's a new economy and a post-carbon future, not jobs or the environment, jobs and the environment. Looking for some questions. Okay, so what are people thinking? What do people think? I want to know. Let me know in the comments there. What do people think? Who do you think won tonight? Was it, Jagmeet Singh introduced himself to Canadians? Was it Elizabeth May, maybe for the first time ever being taken seriously? Was it Andrew Scheer as the only big party leader being given the main stage? Or, as some people suggest, was it Justin Trudeau just not not being there, not in the fray? What do you guys think? Have that. A lot of people say Singh. Steve says 3 losers. I mean, I don't necessarily. I mean, I think Singh won. I'm biased, but I'm also following the remarks I've seen on social media. One thing I saw on social media, and now this isn't everything. This isn't everything. But if you looked at what was trending on Twitter, the first couple trends were like the first debate, which was the official Maclean's trend. But the next one was an American thing because, of course, I wouldn't be surprised if many Canadians are watching the American debate tonight. I would normally be covering that, but I'm a good patriotic Canadian, so I'm here with you guys talking about Canada stuff. But the reality is that Singh was trending number one. He was trending above Scheer and May, and Jagmeet was right up there too. So Jagmeet and Singh were 2 separate trends, and I think that shows that Canadians are interested in him. And looking at the top trends that I saw, they were mostly positive about him, and they weren't all coming from the people I follow and traditional NDP circles. And I think that bodes very well. I think this was a good night for Jagmeet Singh. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Some like again, May. I think again from a technical perspective had a good performance. I think that she clearly again has some experience that the other two don't have at this stage, and I think that she tapped into that. Again, I don't agree with her viewpoints. I felt like she didn't on a and hitting some of the key points on rebutting Jugmeat. She failed, when to say, well, Jugmeet said, well, you're unclear on sovereignty and a woman's right to choose. And she said, well, that's absurd, and offered no rebuttal because there is no rebuttal. But she didn't even try. She says, well, I'm not even going to acknowledge that. Well, that's not good enough, Elizabeth May, because we have proof. We have proof that you are unclear about that. I was on the CBC a couple nights ago, coast to coast on 8 different networks, and I said, we do not know what the Green Party believes about 3 or 4 key issues, and Jugmeet hit on them. And I think that Elizabeth May, for all the polish, failed at that key, defensive aspect. Miles, you said the viewpoints. One is on sovereignty. It's clear, like with the Pierre Nantel thing. Elizabeth May said they don't kick people out of the Green Party. And then Pierre Nantel suggested that he would want Canada to separate. He would want Quebec to separate from Canada as soon as possible. And then Elizabeth May said, well, if he does believe that, well, she said first, that doesn't make him a separatist, which is BS. There's nothing that makes you more separatist than what he said, right? Even most don't want to separate now. It's like a distant goal. And then she said, well, if he really did mean to be a separatist, then we'd kick him out. But what does that mean, Elizabeth May? Does that mean that you do tell your MPs what to believe and how to vote, or don't you? And then the same thing on the question of a woman's right to choose. Elizabeth May said that the Greens would accept somebody who voted with Andrew Scheer's party on reopening that debate. And then a couple hours later, there was a press release that tried to walk that back. And then later on, the next day, it came out that there are 2 current Green Party candidates who in the last few years have taken open stances against women's rights. And they are still Green Party candidates. So which is it? I ask again, do the Green Party, do they accept somebody on that with that viewpoint against a woman's fundamental human rights, or don't they? We don't know the answer. We don't know the answer. And those are the 2 biggest ones. Yeah, Lisa, you make a great point. Lisa makes a fantastic point that Singh, basically going to Scheer and saying, well, you've said some, because Scheer, I think at first struck a good tone. He was very much like, we have to build a partnership with Indigenous people. I'm like, okay, Andrew Scheer, he's saying the right things. I don't believe him, but like I could see people believing him. But then Singh was right. He sort of cut through that and said, accept the ruling. And then further again, much like Justin Trudeau, he basically said consultation, but not if it actually means something. And I think both to May and Singh's credit, they both did a good job there. And I think as well, Singh, maybe a little bit more than May, but May did a decent job here too. They both did a good job criticizing how Scheer and Trudeau failed to stand up to people like Donald Trump, specifically on the Safe Third Country Agreement. So on that front, I think both Singh and a very good job. And I think Singh was 100% right. Real strength as a Canadian leader is not just agreeing with the Americans all the time, right? Real strength as a Canadian leader is recognizing that however important the friendship is with the United States, that we have to be a free-thinking, independent nation. That friendship will endure beyond time. We can't legitimize him with things like the third country agreement. It will, that will be something that like the future historians will excoriate Justin Trudeau on and Andrew Scheer on as well. Like, absolutely, that will go down as a bad decision. Liberal and conservative prime ministers in the past have stood up to the United States. Pierre Trudeau did it. John Diefenbaker did it. Like, this is like both parties have done it at different points in history, right? They've taken principled stands. And did it create tensions with the United States? It did. But at the end of the day, are the two countries still friends? Of course they are. Of course they are. And so I think we need to be bolder here and say, look, we're not going to legitimize Donald Trump. We have to realize that Americans hate Donald Trump. The average American does not like Donald Trump. Why are we bending over to make, such a deeply troubling and unpopular president happy? Why are we doing that? And the answer is, and here's the real answer. It's not because Justin Trudeau and Andrew Scheer are scared of Trump. It's because they agree with him. It's because they agree with him. And that's damaging, especially to Trudeau. Because here's the thing with Trudeau. Trudeau needs all of the sorts of Canadians, the vast majority of Canadians who do not like Donald Trump, to see him as the anti-Trump. But Trudeau and Trump are aligned on so many issues. They're aligned on way more than they're not. They really are. And so Trudeau says, oh, well, we have to, be diplomatic here. Well, it's you agree with Trump, but you don't want to look like you're agreeing with him. And I think Singh cut through that, and even May, to a lesser degree, cut through that tonight and said, Scheer and Trudeau, why are you kowtowing to Trump? But then again, Elizabeth May had a real baffler when she's like, Ronald Reagan did these great things. I'm like, Ronald freaking Reagan? Really? Are the Green Party, are they praising Ronald Reagan? Of all people, Ronald gosh darn Reagan. I can't believe it. Like, that was such a bad move. I don't think that's going to hurt her. But like, my goodness, was that for me, I was like, why is she doing that? Maticus, I think, asking a stronger rebuttal to the Greens on LNG support in BC. I think what the NDP needs to note is that while we are a party where we share links between the provinces and the federal party, that is true. I think that makes our party strong. It shows that being a New Democrat is not just a calculation. It's a way of life. It's a movement. And so you can't just be a New Democrat, in Manitoba and be a liberal federally. That's not how this works. A New Democrat is a New Democrat. I like that. It does create some challenges. Here's what Singh did well. He noted that he's not going to ban LNG. He said we were going to cut subsidies. And so we're going to shift the model away from what's been happening, which is that if these projects require, basically corporate welfare to run, they will die. And so that gives Singh, I think, a bit of wiggle room, which was a good tactic. If the project is profitable, he won't fund it, but he won't stop BC from implementing it. And I think that's probably a good tactical move. I think another thing needs to be said here. I don't know if this is a good decision, but this is what I believe. The Green Party holds the balance of power in British Columbia, and they have used that balance of power against the NDP to slow down the minimum wage increase to $15. They'll get there, but they've slowed it down, and to prevent the NDP from making it easier for workers to join a union. One of the best things a worker can do for themselves and their family is to join a union, and the Greens refuse to make it easier. But the Greens have not demonstrated a desire to challenge the government existentially on either Site C or LNG. The Greens have suggested, look, we'll block you and maybe we'll take the government down for raising the minimum wage and for giving workers an easier path to unions. Why have the Greens not done the same on SNC and LNG? And the reason is the Greens either support those policies or they support them more than they support workers. So I think there's something to be said for the Green Party being partially responsible for Site C and LNG. It is theirs too. The Green Party is so adamant that it is bad, they should pull down the NDP government and send British Columbians to the polls and then run against LNG and Site C. Until they do that, the Green Party, from my perspective, has no room to criticize the NDP on those issues. Now, is that convincing or not? I have no goddamn idea, but that's my perspective. Miles, the Green Party does not whip votes, so she has to have that nuance. That's exactly the problem. If you don't whip votes, then I don't know what you stand for. And frankly, it's unfair to Green Party members. Look at it this way. Green Party has members. They have people who believe in that vision. I have friends who are Greens. I have more friends who are Greens than any other party but the NDP. At least maybe I don't anymore, given how hard I've gone at the Greens in the last couple months. But I did have Green friends. And I say that they are very passionate people who believe in things deeply. And they probably work very hard to help provide the Green Party a thoughtful policy book. We may all disagree with some parts of it, maybe a lot of it, but it's there. But what Elizabeth May has said is that people elected under the Green banner are in no way accountable to the Green Party's policies, to the platform. And therefore, the Green Party MPs or candidates are not accountable to the members of the party. They're not. The Green Party cannot tell somebody how to vote. If that's actually true, then Canadians should never vote for them because you're voting for a literal dice roll. Simple as that. I understand the desire to wrest power away from the central caucuses and the party leaders, but the alternative is, like, the Green Party could elect somebody who wants to build pipelines. That could happen. The Green Party could elect somebody who wants to take away your fundamental human rights. It could happen. And the Green Party apparently is fine with it. But then again, Elizabeth May says, well, on some issues, maybe we would whip or we would boot. And that's the thing. The Green Party itself doesn't know where it stands on its own fundamental issue of caucus discipline. That's a big problem. That's not nuance. That's confusion. It's confusion. Brody, the Greens progressive as well. I mean, on some issues they are, on some issues they're not. I would suggest that the way our political spectrum is of the main federal parties, the big four, the ones that you'll see on a debate stage when Justin Trudeau bothers to show up. You have a center-right / middle-right conservative party. And then you have a center-right liberal party. Then you have a Green Party that is everything from centrist to center-right, on maybe center left to center right, depending on the issue. And then you have a center left NDP. That's the broad scope of our politics from my perspective. You also have the Bloc Québécois, which I would classify on economic issues as center left, but on cultural issues as very much dependent. On issues relating to people, to the rights of, say, religious minorities, they're right leaning, but on women's issues and on social issues, they're equivalent to the NDP. So that's our broad spectrum. The Greens are not a right-wing party, but they're not a left-wing party either. The Green Party in Canada is not like the Green Party in the USA or in much of Europe. It has its roots actually in the Conservative Party, our Green Party. Elizabeth May was at one point in her life a conservative operative. It has its roots in the old conservative parties and not in, a socialist, working class, radical movement. All right, Joshua, you said make sure you turn on the chat replay for this so I can rewatch and see the questions. Joshua, thanks for letting me know. I didn't know I could do that. I was like, why did it work sometimes and not others? I will try my best to do that. As you guys might realize, I'm sort of new at this, and I apologize for the whole stopping and starting thing. Normally, when I do my weekly live streams every Wednesday night at 8 p.m., from next Wednesday until the end of the federal election, I will be live weekly on Wednesdays. After the election, I might go back to once every 2 weeks, or I might stay at a weekly schedule. If I keep getting 70 people here, then certainly I'm going to go live every week. I think this is a great turnout for a channel of my size, and I really appreciate you all taking the time to come here and listen to me rant at a microphone, for an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever. But normally I have my wife here who sort of helps me by reading out questions, so I don't miss any, and that I can, more rapidly answer them. And there's a lot more of you here than normal, which makes it great, but more challenging. So do excuse me if I miss your question. I apologize. Do ask it again if it goes a little bit and I don't see it. There's no harm, no foul. I'm going to read as many questions as I can, and try to answer them. Brandon makes a good question. He says, most Greens are progressive. It's the party. And here's the thing. Green voters and Liberal voters aren't that different from NDP voters. Like Liberal activists and Green activists and the party elite of the Liberal Party, like the Bay Street elite, they're very different from the New Democrats. But when you poll on many issues, what you see is that Liberal and NDP and Green voters are more similar than you might think. That the parties are different, but the voters have similar visions for the country. Generally on those issues, the NDP is the most progressive on most of those issues, but for the most part, they're in the broad camp. Like, for instance, when they polled on the wealth tax, Liberals and NDPers basically supported it the same amount. Conservatives, a majority of conservatives support a wealth tax, but it was much lower. And so what that tells me is that NDP values are very popular. And that's our challenge, is to sell the NDP brand as the logical conclusion of what progressive Canadians believe. And this is the reason, above all, why Justin Trudeau lied to every single one of us about electoral reform, because he feels he has Canadians hostage with this system, because he knows that Canadians don't actually want what he's selling. They want what the NDP is selling, and would vote for it if they didn't fear the Conservatives. Right? So, Brandon, I totally agree with you that that the Green voters and even many Liberal voters are progressives. They believe in many of the same things we do. Maybe not, as stridently. Maybe not as they don't want to move as fast as we do, but they broadly believe in the same things. And that's a good thing. It's also one of our challenges. For those who are not longtime viewers of this channel, do go back through some of my videos. I did an interview with Brendan where we talked U.S. politics. Brendan's a scholar, so we had a really great discussion. So if you want to see Brandon and I have a more detailed discussion, go back and watch that after this stream. Here, you ask me if you want me to do a breakdown of each of the party's policies and how they compare. I think that could do very well as a video. I'm trying to make videos that I think will have an appeal to people, that I have an expertise in making, that I have something interesting to say. Excuse me, and that have like that effect. And so if I can figure out a way to do some kind of streamlined analysis of each of the parties, then I'll certainly look at doing that. Whether it's one video or whether it's, a couple videos, maybe it's a mini series, I'll certainly look at doing something like that going forward. But again, I want to make videos where I feel I have a hook, because, it's not like there's a lot of people who do Canadian politics chats on YouTube. There's basically me and David Dole, and that's pretty much it. But still, I don't want to just parrot what you're going to hear on CBC, CTV, Global, etc. I want to give you not only my ideological perspective, but often covering issues that go undercovered in the media, which is why I've talked a lot about the wealth tax, because it hasn't been talked a lot about outside of, progressive circles online and on my channel. Alibi, sorry if I'm reading that wrong. Alibi, what do you think of the PPC? Hate them. Hate the PPC. Awful party. Maxime Bernier is, frankly, he's a disgrace. I'm not mincing words. Maxime Bernier is awful. His views are awful. His views have no place within respectable Canadian discourse. And I'm not saying that to censor him. He has a right to spout his bad ideas all over the internet. I think it's right he's not invited to the debates. And again, not because of his views, but because I've seen no evidence he can win more than one seat. And I've seen some evidence suggesting he won't win his own seat. No, I have no time for the PPC. Their views are abhorrent. Their views are abhorrent. And I hope they end up in the dustbin of history. I don't know if they will. I think for the PPC to succeed, they need a couple things to happen. I've talked about this before. One, they need Maxime Bernier to win his seat. If he loses his seat, the PPC is likely dead. Two, here's what I think they actually need to succeed. They need a conservative government in power. With a liberal government or an NDP government in Ottawa, the PPC will never gain traction because the conservative movement will have an external enemy that is in power. And so this is what caused unity in Alberta. The breakup between the PCs and the Wild Rose happened because they were disenchanted with an existing conservative government. So here's where Maxime Bernier finds long-term success or medium-term success. He wins his seat. I don't think he'll win more than one. Andrew Scheer forms a government and alienates conservative voters when he tries to, close debate on some of the more controversial issues. And that causes Maxime Bernier to rise higher in the polls and gives him a few seats in the subsequent election. That's how they can survive. But if Trudeau wins again, or if Singh wins, or if Bernier loses his seat, the PPC is dead and Canada will be better for it. Okay, let me see. Sorry, there's a ton of stuff here. Well, Maticus, you're saying what's the polling look like right now? Again, the NDP's polling is highly variant. Some polls have us, neck and neck or a little bit behind the green. Some polls have us basically where we were in 2019. I don't want to speculate there. I do think if the polls are accurate right now, the goal for the NDP would be a minority government where we hold the balance of power. But Singh had a great performance tonight. And I will say that, like, Jack Layton was polling under 15% in the early stages of the 2011 election and ended up with over 30. Now, will that happen with Singh? I don't know. The odds are not good because that was a historic result. But the potential is there for him to gain some momentum, especially if he continues to perform well on things like debate stages and whatnot. So right now, I think the goal is a minority government, build a strong base to run again and get influence on the subsequent government. But he could end up with better. Chaz said, first-time stream viewer. Chaz is one of my viewers, one of my patrons. Thank you so much for coming by. It's great to see this. Raul asks, reform or revolution? You reform, you create revolution through reform. That's how you do it. That's the CCF way. You destroy capitalism through democratic and parliamentary means. Maybe I sound a bit Pollyannic, but that's the way you do it. My eventual goal, like I am on the left wing of the NDP, my eventual goal is a non-capitalist society. A society where the means of production are owned through a combination of worker and cooperative and public means. But I don't think you get there through literal revolution. I think you get there through political revolution. That's just my view. That's another discussion for another time. But if you want to see my discussion of what my socialism is like, my vision of democratic socialism, I did a chat with David Dole on that. So if you look up Christophe Elise, David Dole, it should be one of the results that comes up. Go take a look at that. David, again, for those who don't know who David is, the massive politics channel, mostly covers American politics, but he is Canadian and does cover Canada. Tonight, he's probably talking about the American debate while I'm here, repping Canada. So I don't know if anybody's watching both of us, but if you are, say hi to David. Miles, you say whether you like the NDP Greens better. Well, I mean, I can't make that decision for you, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I have a bias. I think it's important that I lay that bias out. But for the most part, I think, I think the NDP came off better, but I don't think that Elizabeth May necessarily lost the election either. I think that May's had a really rough week. And, this debate did not necessarily stop all of the bleeding, but May didn't have a gaffe fest like she's had on all the internal messaging issues that they've had, since last weekend, basically. So I would say, if you're still torn, I get that. Maybe my goal on this channel is to convert you to the NDP, but I mean, at the end of the day, you have to make that decision, right? Like whoever you feel represents you and your values and your vision, you vote for them. Even if you're a PPC person, who maybe didn't like what I said about them, I still won't say that you shouldn't that you shouldn't be allowed to vote for the PPC. You want to vote for them, go vote for them. I mean, that's your right as a Canadian. You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. I'll be disappointed a little bit because I don't think their views are particularly good, but you have every right to do so, and I respect your right to do so. Raul says, electoral reform, am I right? And Speedy says, at first past the post is the biggest barrier to the NDP success. I would say that in some ways you're probably right. And I think that's why Justin Trudeau kept it. Again, as I noted, Canadians have broad support for the NDP's vision. The problem is that a lot of people feel trapped by the strategic voting mentality. But the whole problem with that is that even if you accept strategic voting, the way people think about it is broken. It's broken. And that's one of the biggest issues. Strategic voting should never be about vote Liberal to stop the Conservatives. It should be vote to stop a Liberal and Conservative majority government. That's how you get real positive change in this country. It's minority governments that implement, NDP policies from time to time. And so in Toronto, you're going to see Liberals in downtown Toronto saying, oh, you got to vote for the Liberals to stop Andrew Scheer. In Davenport, the NDP and the Liberals last time both got above 40 points, and the Conservatives got 10 points. Strategic voters will tell you to vote Liberal in Toronto to stop Andrew Scheer. They are lying to you if they say that. Even if you believe in strategic voting. And again, I don't, but if you believe in that and that's how you vote, I can't tell you how to vote or how to rationalize your vote. But if you are a strategic voter, there are only so many ridings in this country where it makes sense to actually vote strategically, for the Liberals at least. So for instance, there are so many ridings where the Liberals or Conservatives blow out the rest of the field. No point in strategically voting there. The Conservatives win with 75% in rural Alberta. It doesn't matter if the Liberals are at 8 or the NDP are at 9 or the Liberals are at 11 and the NDP are at 7. It doesn't matter. They're all going to lose. Vote for your party. And then there are ridings where it's NDP versus Liberal. And then there are ridings where it's NDP versus Conservative. So in any of those ridings, the whole Liberal vote Liberal to stop Scheer is lying to you. So keep all of that in mind and tell people that. If you can't convince someone to leave strategic voting, interrogate their internal calculus. Test their strategic voting thought process. If you have a friend in Newfoundland right now, who lives in St. John's, Newfoundland, and he says, I'm thinking about voting for the Liberals because I want to stop Scheer. And he said, well, actually, in your riding, the Conservatives are 30 points behind both the NDP and the Liberals. Just vote for the NDP to make sure that we get a minority government, to do your part. And I think if people really are wedded to strategic voting, we have to weaponize our knowledge of the system to convert them and to make them actual strategic voters. Lisa, about Trudeau and housing. I mean, I think that will be one of the issues that Singh will bring up is, Justin Trudeau failing to provide the things Canadians need because he sides with the rich and powerful. And it's why do we not have dental care or pharmacare or childcare or housing? It's because Justin Trudeau doesn't want to make the investments into public services because that doesn't make rich people money. And again, I don't know if specifically that's going to hit on housing as hard as, say, healthcare. I think housing is an important issue, but I have a feeling that if Singh does well in this election, healthcare is going to be the reason. That's my view. Because housing's an issue in many parts of the country, in most parts of the country, but healthcare is an issue literally every single place, everywhere. There are a few places in the country where housing's not a huge deal, but healthcare is an issue absolutely everywhere. And so I think Singh is right in noting that healthcare will likely be a bigger priority. And I think that, housing is going to be something, though, that the NDP is going to target very well. There are a few areas of the country where the NDP can find real pockets of success, and they are in places like Vancouver and Toronto. So maybe housing won't take the national profile that healthcare does, but look to NDP candidates in those areas to hammer on housing, like, at a specific riding level. Speedy asks, how much value do I place in things like, I side with and things like that? I'm not sure about that specific site, but these general strategic voting sites, I find that they don't work for a whole bunch of reasons. One, and let's be fair. If those sites operated and they were too slow, say in 2015, they might not have seen that Justin Trudeau was ahead of Tom Mulcair. Now that would have been great for me as an NDPer, but what if the polls shift really quickly? How do those sites shift? How about those sites being manipulated by, say, NDP or Liberal or Green voters to, not operate as strategic voting sites, but just operate as vote gathering sites? Here's what I think. Lead Now, I've been very critical of, not on YouTube, I haven't talked about it, but Lead Now for so long has basically been a liberal campaigning organization, because effectively it's like, we got to stop conservative governments, vote to stop conservatives. It almost always means vote liberal. But they actually put out a list of candidates who are strong on climate change, and it includes liberals and Greens and NDPers. And it looks like there's more NDPers than maybe any other party on the list. There's maybe as many Green. There's a lot of Greens too, and there's even a couple conservatives. And maybe they have specific environmental strengths. But they picked a kind of multi-partisan list of people to endorse, and I think that's much more effective. These organizations that only endorse liberals or just say vote to stop Andrew Scheer, I don't really trust them. If you're really a strategic voting organization, nominate progressives wherever they can win, and nominate people to defeat liberals. Like right now, if I'm a group that says I'm a progressive left-wing group, but we gotta stop Scheer at all costs. Look, I don't agree with strategic voting, but let's say I agree with your premise. Why are we not working to defeat Bill Morneau in Toronto? Why are we not working to defeat Chrystia Freeland in Toronto? Why are we not working to defeat Bob Bertina in Hamilton, who said, F you to the steelworkers and F you to pensioners? Like, if you really believe that, the goal should be, yes, in like 905 suburbia, like, yeah, vote for the liberal over the conservative, because like that's like, it's a blue-green switcher. But like, defeat liberals everywhere else if you're really a progressive, because the liberals aren't progressive. They're not. And there's nothing that makes a liberal government as unaccountable to its own voters and members as a majority liberal regime. When the liberals have a minority, however, they're much more accountable to their promises, and they're much more accountable to the people that actually voted for them. And so that should be every goal of a strategic mandate. Zachary says, I like your interview with Aisha Yangir. Thank you so much for that. I've been doing some interviews with NDP candidates and other folks. Again, I've interviewed Brandon. I did an interview with Luke Savage from Jacobin. Many of you might know him from Twitter and from his podcast. And he writes for Jacobin. He writes for other sources as well. I also interviewed Matthew Green, who is one of my favorite up-and-coming stars in the New Democratic Party. I don't have any more interviews scheduled, but that doesn't mean there won't be more. I have been in some discussions with some candidates and their teams about having more interviews, but no news yet. I don't want to advertise an interview and then have it fall through, or advertise an interview and then make the person feel like they're obligated, and candidates are very busy. So if an interview happens, I'll post it up. It'll be a bit of a surprise, but I do want to try to get more of those things to you. I'd love to interview, somebody like Sven Robinson. I think that'd be so cool. And that's not a sign that like I'm going to, but I would like to interview someone like him, because Like I could approach it as a politics guy, but also because he's got such a long career as a historian of the NDP. And we could talk about Tommy Douglas and his time in the parliament. That would be a fun interview. And I think you guys would enjoy that one too. At least I'm assuming. Jim Carrey fan club. Would I consider interviewing your candidate in Barrie Innisfil? I would consider interviewing any NDP candidate. There's a few things I want to consider because I've gotten some approaches from some people. Is one, I want I want them to be invested in helping to share the interview around because it helps to promote the idea, it helps to promote the channel. So I want a campaign that's willing to do that work and helping me promote the interview. That's the small part. A big one is I don't just want to talk to candidates and just say, why are you running? Who are you? What are you doing? Etc. I don't think my viewers would be that interested, especially my viewers who aren't from that area of the country or who aren't like Canadian. But what I've done with Aisha and Matthew Green is I talk to them about their general desire to run, but a specific issue they have knowledge and passion about. So with Matthew Green, we talked about public ownership and the Green New Deal and economic democracy. And with Aisha, because she's got a background in labor activism and specifically as a healthcare worker, we talked about how the NDP plan is going to help communities and healthcare workers and all of those sorts of things. So if you have a candidate who can work with me to help promote the interview and can give me a hook to sell it as more than just a get to know the candidate, I'd be happy to do so. I'd be happy to do so. You could send me an email, send me a note on Facebook or Twitter or what have you, and I'll do my best to respond. I can't promise anything. It has to fit schedules, but I'm not saying no to candidates big and small. It's not like I'm only trying to interview the quote unquote big names. My goal is to help NDPers get their message out there and also inform my subscribers and my potential viewers. Data lore? Did I read Sam Ginden's Socialism for Realists? I haven't actually. I've read a ton of Sam's work. Sam's, of course, as many of you might know, he's a long time worker activist, and he was a researcher at the auto workers back when back before they became Unifor, and he has this long history. He's one of these people who writes academic books, but is also the subject of academic study in some way because he's had such a great career. In my research for my PhD dissertation, I read a lot of Ginden's reports that he wrote when he was a researcher for the UAW and some of his really good analyses. I haven't read that book, but I've run a ton by him and it's on my list. So I can't really speak to it specifically, but I do like his work generally. Raul says, why is there no socialist party on the ballot? Well, the NDP is a socialist party, and this is a controversial. I do feel this is the party of social democracy and or democratic socialism. And here's the thing. I don't distinctify those words. That might be controversial, but that's what David Lewis, former NDP leader, said. He said the words mean the same thing. We can mince debates about it. And I know Brandon might still be here as well. Political science defines them differently. They're the same thing. What social democracy is an attempt to make it look like you're not a democratic socialist, because you don't want to use the socialist word. So use the social word, but really the goal should be democratic socialism. The NDP isn't there yet as much as it could be or should be, but it is the only party federally that has multiple candidates, a significant amount of candidates, many of whom are in winnable ridings, who are clear democratic socialists. It is the only option for democratic socialists at the federal level. And in every province except Quebec, it's the only option. Quebec has Quebec Solidaire. And if I was in Quebec, I would vote for Quebec Solidaire provincially. That's the only time I would not vote NDP. So if you want socialist options in Canada, the only option at the provincial and federal levels are the NDP, and in Quebec provincially, Quebec Solidaire. Now, the NDP can't be more socialist or shouldn't be more socialist, but it is the part of socialism in Canada historically and at least to some degree still today. People might not agree with me, but that's my perspective. Well, I'll ask why. Why not have a municipal socialist party where you can elect some councillors? Well, part of the issue is that in Canada, at least in most provinces, there aren't municipal parties. Um, you know, in British Columbia there are, but not here in Ontario, not in most provinces. Municipal politics have basically they have ideological slates, but not really parties. So, for instance, in Kingston, Ontario, shout out for all those here who might be here from Kingston, we have. A liberal federal MP and an NDP provincial member MPP. But our city is sort of divided into two broad camps. On the one hand, you have a liberal conservative alliance that's centered around the capitalist class and the land owning class, both corporate and rental properties. And then on the other hand, you have a sort of green liberal, you have a sort of green NDP alliance with a few left-leaning liberals who form a more progressive slate at the city level. So there's no parties, but there's essentially two broad camps. So for instance, the progressive city councilor base in Kingston is mostly New Democrats, but includes some liberals and includes some Greens. So that's my phone ringing. Just ignore it. It's too far away for me to get if you guys hear that. But look, the reality is that municipal politics isn't really a party system in most of Canada. Asher, you asked the NDP's housing plan. It does include things like housing, public housing. It does include investments into cooperation. I do think one of the limitations of the plan is it should be more wedded into public housing. I think that would give a clear differentiation, and I think that's the solution. But it does include various models, investing in cooperatives, investing in just building more property, and also in some public builds. But it isn't as public housing centric as I would prefer. Raul, the question about Singh and the military industrial, I don't know what you're referring to specifically, if it's to London, Ontario, and the London, Ontario, where Singh said he wouldn't support the Saudi arms deal. I think he was bang on. Look, I understand that it's going to affect a lot of working people, and those jobs matter, and those people matter. I don't want to downplay that. But the reality is that if we really believe in those jobs, we can always build different things in those plants. We can nationalize them. We can build crown corporations to provide the things Canadian needs and jobs for good people. Priorities. We do not need to sell arms to an evil regime in Saudi Arabia. And I don't care about a contract with Stephen Harper. We should tear it up. And if there's a fine, tell the Saudis to go pound sand. I don't give one damn about Saudi Arabia. Justin Trudeau is using the Harper, contract as an excuse. Jagmeet Singh has a strong stance on that issue, and he has the right stand on that issue. Maticus, you asked the NDP's branding. I think that's a fair point because the NDP has a certain issue with branding because the name doesn't really describe a whole lot, right? It doesn't describe a particular vision. The question is, picking a new name is always going to be controversial, and people just know the NDP as the NDP. I don't know if a name change will be as important as just being clear on policy, but people have talked about it. The party is now 50 years old and more. Is it really new? That's a big question, and I don't know. I don't know if we're ever going to change the name. The party started as the New Party when the CCF merged into it, and they kept it as a placeholder name and then never changed it. So they went from New Party to New Democratic Party and then said, I guess that's fine. And they never, people said, well, should we call it the Labour Party or the Social Democrat or what have you? And they just kept NDP. Bill Williams said he'd like me to interview Jagmeet Singh. Man, I'd like to interview Jagmeet as well. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Jagmeet Singh did follow me on Twitter, which was pretty cool. I was like, okay, that's very nice. I don't know if Jagmeet Singh would have the time to be interviewed by someone like me, But of course, if the opportunity arose, I'd be very happy to do it. But I don't know if that's on the cards right now. I certainly haven't been in any talks. But perhaps when Prime Minister Singh has a bit of free time early next year, maybe he'll sit down with me. Jen asks, does the NDP accept corporate/big donors? In Canada, that's a bit of a difficult question to answer because corporations and unions can't make donations federally. Only individuals can. And the maximum a person can donate. Now, there are exceptions because you can donate to individual ridings and then you can donate to the party central and on and on. But in essence, the max you can donate is like $1,300. So, that's one thing. So that you can't really make massive donations. One thing that should be said is that billionaires in this country, there's something like 40 of the Canada's 100 billionaires or whatnot, or some of them have donated to both the Liberals and Conservatives, but I don't know if any of them have donated to the NDP. And I think that's much like Bernie Sanders. The fact that you don't get billionaires cutting you checks is a good thing. I'm just going to be right back. That might be my wife texting me. Just literally give me 1 minute. Don't all leave. I'll be right back. All right. Okay, one person left. One person left. You guys know who it is? I don't know. Was somebody like, I'm out. I'm out. But no, Brianna was texting me just to say, I know you're on stream. I'll talk to you later. So my leaving there was utterly meaningless. So now I'm back. Nathan asks, I just got back from watching the Dem debate. How was yours? I mean, ours was pretty good. I thought it was a productive debate. I thought it went very well. I think Jagmeet Singh won. I think that most people think Jagmeet Singh won. At least most of the analysts on the program thought he won. Nathan, and who else was watching the U.S. debate? What happened there? I haven't seen it yet. What are the takes? How did Bernie do? I'm excited to see if Bernie did well. I'll probably see if I can maybe watch a recap of the debate. Who won that debate? Like, and be honest. Don't sugarcoat it for me. Who did well? I'm hoping that Bernie and Liz did well. Bernie more so than Liz, of course. Bernie did very well. He made sure to contrast the issues. I think this is good. I think Bernie has played his cards pretty well. Bernie didn't really need to go on the offensive in the first couple debates because he was the debates were all about him anyway. People could come to him and he could parry them. And I think it was really smart for him and Liz Warren to basically work together in the second debate because it made sure that they would just poach support away from the neoliberals. And I think that was a big move. But I do think that Bernie does need to make a move soon because I'm concerned about Warren gaining momentum. And I'm concerned that if they don't start reeling in Biden soon, he's going to win. And then Trump's going to be president again because Biden is going to be awful. Somebody made a great joke on Twitter. I'll get back to the Canadian stuff soon. Somebody made a great joke on Twitter that Joe Biden combines all the things I hate about Bill Clinton with all the things I hate about Hillary Clinton and puts them together into one nice, neat little package. And I was like, you know what? That's the perfect way of describing Joe Biden. Like, there are things that are likable about Bill Clinton, and there are things that are inspiring about Hillary Clinton, whatever you think about them ultimately. But Joe Biden has like the worst of both of those people. Yeah. Yang got called out for supporting charter schools. Andrew Yang is bad, guys. I want to make a video about how Andrew Yang is bad, but the internet will destroy me. You know what I mean? If I make a video about how Andrew Yang is bad, guys, you have to promise to stick up for me in the comments. Okay, if I do make an Andrew Yang, call out video, will you guys be there for me? Because otherwise, it's just going to be a bunch of people, with a fedora on and, a vape pen in one hand and, an Uber, car waiting for them outside telling me how I just don't understand how society works, right? Like, you got to be there for me if I make a Yang video because I mean, like, honestly, I made I suggested in one of my chats with Michael Brooks, FYI, for those who follow Michael Brooks, I should be on his show next week. I believe the 17th, I'll be on the Michael Brooks show, or we're recording on the 17th. I'll give you more details, but Michael and I will be doing something sometime soon. I had a chat with him just on Twitter being like, I want to make a video critical of Yang. And no fooling, I got like 40 comments where Yang people were like, bring it on, bro. You're just going to highlight how great we are. And I'm like, your guy thinks $1,100 a month is a guaranteed annual income, and his climate plan is move away from the ocean. Like I have no time for the Yang gang. And like the fact that he supports charter schools is not at all surprising. And I mean, one thing that I noted here is that him and the Green Party are linked because they both have the same stupid slogan. That not left, not right, but forward slogan. And I made a recent video about that, saying that the Green Party and Andrew Yang slogan is awful. I hate it. I hate it so much. I hate it so much. It's like, okay, we're here in the rational center, right? Like, we're here in the nice rational center, and you have crazy people like Donald Trump that want to ban people because of their religion. And then you have crazy people like Bernie Sanders who thinks everyone should have medical care. And they're both unreasonable. And aren't we the good, reasonable people? That's what that slogan sounds like, even if they don't mean it. Like, honestly, like, I don't know. Yang, I don't even know. Like, and he's gaining in the polls from what I've seen. He's not going to win this, but like, he passed Buttigieg, I think, in some of the polls. Like, I don't like Buttigieg a whole lot, but I mean, Buttigieg has made a couple major contributions to this race. One, him being openly gay is important. It's a milestone to have him try to seek this office. I think that means something. Two, he's a young guy, and I think it's important to see young people make runs for big offices. And three, Buttigieg said something really important, which was like, look, the Republicans are going to attack us as socialists, whether or not we actually are. So Buttigieg says, stop worrying about what Republicans think about us and just be what you are. And Buttigieg isn't a socialist, but he was 100% right in saying that. And I actually thought Buttigieg said that better than anybody else has, which is like, look, just be what you're going to be, because the Republicans are not, you don't argue in good faith with Republicans about, being seen as respectable and moderate. Sorry, yeah, somebody says, is this on Canadian or American politics? Sorry, I got off on a track there. I did want to ask people, but the reality was that I just wanted I wanted to catch up on the U.S. debate. For this channel, for people who don't know, it's primarily a Canadian politics channel, but not exclusively one. I talk about American politics. I talk about other issues on the broad left. If it has something to do with the left, I can and sometimes will cover it on the channel. Most of my content relates to Canadian politics, but not all of it does. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. So I do talk about Bernie Sanders a lot because I feel I'm a big fan of Bernie. And so normally what I do for both Canadian and American debates is I do a post-debate live stream. But because they were both tonight, I decided to focus on the Canadian one. But, for subsequent American debates, look for live streams on those as well. Yeah, like a UBI, is any socialist society, any good society at some point will need something like a UBI. I am not opposed to the philosophy behind it. I'm not. But the way it's envisioned by people like Andrew Yang and Elizabeth May is that it's used as a method to lock in existing inequalities. It's used as a tool to stop us from asking the bigger questions. about job guarantees, or even more fundamentally, hey, maybe the issue isn't just that machines are going to make it harder for the average person to get enough hours to work to feed themselves. Maybe it's, why don't we all start working 30-hour weeks or 25-hour weeks? Why don't we have 4-day weeks now? Because we have less hours to work and the machines are more productive, so we can raise wages. So you can work 4 days instead of 5 and take the same amount of wages home, which is effectively like a 20% wage increase. Basic income stops a lot of those discussions in our current political context. And it stops the most fundamental question of all. Maybe it's not the automation that's the problem. Maybe it's the private ownership of the means of automation. Basic income it obscures all that. And Andrew Yang's basic income isn't a basic income. It's $1,100 a month. Look, America is a very wealthy society. If Yang wanted to go all in and be like, here's the deal. We're going to effectively guarantee everybody like $30,000 a year. Everybody. And we're going to, really actually make a real deal universal basic income. And I'm like, okay, Yang, like I might not agree with where you ultimately end up, but I'm listening. Like all he's doing is writing people like a check that even in the poorest states will not allow them to survive. Like what's a person in New York going to do with $1,100 a month? It's not a basic income. It's not a basic income at all. I mean, I don't know. I'm okay. I'm going to get off US politics. Somebody asked me a Canadian question or something, because I don't want to make this a US politics chat. But yeah, I can't stand that kind of, I can't. I don't know why Yang gets under my skin so much. I don't know why. I think it's like the followers. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know. It's like, I think because he's bad in a different way. Like I'm used to people like John Delaney and Joe Biden, but I'm like, you see like an Andrew Yang, and I'm like, okay, yeah, you're differently bad. So I'm like not desensitized to it. I don't know. Oh, Manitoba election. I did a little bit of a recap on my last live stream because uh before when the writ dropped, when the election was officially announced, I did a sort of impromptu live stream. We talked a bit about the Manitoba election. Look, I wanted the NDP to win. Disappointed they didn't. But the way politics work in most places is that often governments get more than one kick at the can. Not every time, but more often than not. Like, for example, in federal politics, a prime minister that won a general election has almost always got to try at least one more time. So Justin Trudeau, maybe the streak is over, but Harper got more than one election. Even Paul Martin got more than one. Chrétien got more than one. Brian Mulroney got more than one. Kim Campbell doesn't count because, again, she never won a general election when she became prime minister. Neither does John Turner. He never won his prime ministership through an election, so it doesn't count. You have to go all the way back to Joe Clark in 1979 to find a prime minister who won an election and then lost his first incumbent election. So it's not surprising that Pallister, in his first attempt to get reelected, won. But there was a couple encouraging signs for the NDP. One, they elected a strong, diverse base of MPs that reflect Manitoba's present and future. A lot of the attacks on Wab Kinew, that frankly, some of them were racially motivated. And that's despicable. But some of them were just, regular political attacks. Those aren't going to work the second time around. Like, they're not. They've spent that force. Now he's going to have, it's going to be much harder to attack him in the second time he runs for premier. Another factor is that the majority was reduced. The conservative majority was reduced. It's still a majority government. It's a silver lining on a dark cloud. But crucially for the NDP, they kept the Green Party from winning a seat, and they took away the Liberal Party's official party status. And I think all of those things have strengthened the NDP in Manitoba, and those are good signs. Purple Ghost, Jugmeat's position is that we shouldn't have subsidies for industries like that. And I think that's probably the best way you can approach it at this stage. I mean, it's hard to ban LNG. Federal governments have a lot of leeway over energy policy, but not universal leeway. Ultimately, natural resources are owned by the provinces, and there's only so much you can do as a prime minister. Now, prime ministers can do things like control pipeline policies because pipelines cross national and provincial boundaries. But if Justin Trudeau, and you can impose a carbon tax, but like Jugmeat, let's say this, like let's say Alberta just wanted to use tar sand oil, didn't want to ship it out of Alberta. This is like an academic exercise. The NDP federally, if they wanted to even, could not prohibit the extraction and use of tar sand oil. They could not, because it is a provincial jurisdiction. Now, they could prevent the means of shipping it across borders. They said they say, well, the government owns the railways, or the federal government has jurisdiction over railways and pipelines and borders, and we could prohibit it. But if BC, for instance, wants to use LNG in its internal use, especially, there's only so much a federal government can do. There's only so much they can do. They can cut subsidies is one thing they can do. They can have a carbon tax and other things to discourage fossil fuel uses, but it's very difficult to actually tell them they're not allowed to do it. And again, Purple, I have to be clear here. People have been, but like, here's the thing. The Green Party in British Columbia has a choice. If they really actually believe that Site C and LNG are bad, they can pull down the NDP government. Again, they threatened to do it when the NDP tried to make it easier to unionize. The Green Party has launched that threat before. If the Green Party actually believes in what they're criticizing the NDP for on LNG and Site C, pull the government down and send British Columbians to the polls. Until then, I have to be honest, the LNG and Site C policies belong just as much to the Greens as they do to the NDP. And the federal Greens can say, well, we're different on the issue, but then if they're allowed to say that, then so is Jagmeet Singh. I mean, Biden's teeth, I mean, I don't know. I didn't see were his teeth nicer than normal? I mean, I don't know. I mean, Biden, he's, I don't know. Biden have nice teeth. I don't know. That one threw me off guard. I don't know what to say to that. Yeah, Jen, like, yeah, if the cap being about $1,300 means that, yeah, you can usually donate to multiple parties and stuff. Now, $1,300 is more than most Canadians donate, but the way it works is we have tax rebates, and they're slightly graduated. So I don't know because I've never donated $1,300. But if, for instance, you donate $400 to a political party, which I have done, then if you donate $400, then when you do your taxes, you get $300 of that back. So effectively, you can give $400 to a political party, and it'll only cost you $100. Now, at $1,300, the rebate isn't 75; it's more like 50%. But in effect, it's a bit more accessible than otherwise. Now, I don't know. So billionaires can't buy the process like they can with super PACs in the US, but they are able to give much more money, and the liberals and conservatives are able to raise big amounts of money off wealthy donors and upper middle class donors because of this, right? I mean, it's the reality. But you can't. It's not like somebody can cut a $40,000 check to the conservatives or liberals or what have you and be done with it. We don't have that system, at least federally, in Canada. Oh, Phil Scott, they fell out. I mean, Biden is, I don't know. He's having a rough one, guys. I don't know. I mean, some of the polls have indicated he's slipping, but on the whole, I think the aggregates still look really good for Biden. I have to hope that it's because most people aren't paying attention yet. And a lot of people are like, I'm going with Biden because he was Obama's guy. And like, maybe after Christmas and like, the actual primaries and caucuses start happening, maybe people will realize Biden is awful. But my goodness, I can't believe that right now they're on track to pick Biden. And some of the polls indicate it won't even be close. Like, I can't believe it. Nurple asks, why were people coming down on Jagmeet? Because of that, people were concerned. I don't think it's fully accurate, although it's not fully inaccurate, that the federal government doesn't control healthcare. That federal governments make major investments into healthcare. There's the Canada Health Act, basically, which has the federal government distribute funds for provincial healthcare. But ultimately, the provinces run their healthcare systems. It's why, for instance, in Canada, you don't have a federal Canadian health card unless you're Indigenous. They have a different system. It's more complicated. I won't get into that. You have a provincial health card, and not every province has the same things offered. So in some provinces, you might have a surgery covered, in another, it's not covered, or vice versa. Or in some provinces, they, a certain going to visit a certain type of doctor has cost money, and some it doesn't, right? Like things like that. And so people saying Jagmeet Singh doesn't really have the jurisdiction to offer funds specifically to build the hospital, because at the end of the day, that is the provincial government's jurisdiction. Now, whether or not you agree or feel that maybe it's more nuanced than that, but that was one of the criticisms. And yes, Phil is skeptical. He was the guy that called Bernier a bigot in London. Yeah, if you want to go check that out, it's all over social media. He basically got booted out by the police. I don't know why the police are doing security work for Biden. Like, it's one thing to protect him, it's another to do crowd control for him. But he called him a bigot, and you were 100% right to do it. Yeah, purple. I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, look, I've been very critical of the Greens, right? I've been critical a lot, but that BC Green, I know it's not a formal coalition, but that cooperation has been mostly good. And I've been very disappointed by the Greens slowing down labor improvements and whatnot. And I'm sure some Greens are maybe not happy that the NDP hasn't been as small G green as they would like. But at the end of the day, that cooperation is better than what you would be getting under the BC Liberals. And because the BC NDP and the BC Greens are sort of cooperating, that government has about 55% of the electorate supporting it, which is way more than the 40% that would have existed with a Liberal majority, or an NDP majority for that matter. But again, I have to be clear, if Andrew Weaver really thinks the BC NDP is being so bad about Site C and LNG, he will pull the government down, and he will go to the polls, and he will run on that issue. Until he does that, that's his policy too. That's my view. People might not agree with me, but LNG fracking is a green policy in BC until they pull down the government they are supporting. They're endorsing the policy. If there's a major recession in 2020, like 2008, how would the governments react? I think that, well, what happened in 2008 in Canada was that Harper was initially not going to do much, and it almost led to a coalition of Liberals and New Democrats against him. And the Liberals got cold feet and hung us out to dry, giving us 3 more years of Harper. But I think that scared Harper, and he ended up doing a bit more of a stimulus plan. If you have an NDP government, I think you'll see some major investments. If a Liberal government comes in, you'll probably see something similar to what happened under Harper, but a bit more strident. Think more like Obama. I don't know what a conservative regime will do. I really don't. It depends. Like, is it Andrew Scheer? And like, Andrew Scheer's not really a far-right conservative. He's something of a moderate in the party. I know on the whole, he's right-wing compared to the rest of the parties, but he's not from the party's right wing. And so it depends like who controls that caucus. And if it's a right of center government, they might be like they might be more ideologically averse to stimulus spending, and it might create a depressionary spiral. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what will happen. If it's a minority government, you'll likely see some stimulus, because I think the NDP and or Greens will likely have the balance of power, and will probably use that to generate stimulus spending. Purple, about going to a federal program for healthcare. I mean, that's going to require constitutional reform, right? This is the trickiness, right? Like, the federal government can play big roles in healthcare. The NDP knows that, and I'm not discounting that. We can work with that's the reason why Medicare exists. It would not have existed in Canada without the federal government providing funds and providing coordination between the provinces. It wouldn't have. There's just no way it would have happened. So the federal government's role is key. But at the end of the day, to change the jurisdiction would require constitutional reform to take that power away from the provinces invested in the federal government. And right now, I don't see any party willing to spend political capital to do so. And I know that at the very least, Quebec will reject it outright. And the rule with constitutional reform in Canada is every constitutional reform requires at least 7 of the provinces to agree, and those provinces must together add up to 50% of the population plus 1. So it almost always requires at least one of Quebec and Ontario, and then requires a whole bunch of other provinces, and I just don't see it. So the way the federal government involves itself is by providing funding and coordination. Unless Canada has a major crisis such that people are willing to open up the Constitution, the jurisdiction is going to stay the same on that one. Yeah, Speedy, you're right about that. I'm not happy how the BC NDP is handling that with the teachers. Like, if I'm being honest, I don't think that's a move. One, tactically, it's a bad move. The BC NDP has, because of its good fiscal management and the way it's run that province, has a budget surplus, quite a large one. I've noted that on this channel. They could easily just give the teachers a good deal, not give the teachers everything they want. I understand that, negotiations have to happen, but not fight the teachers on the core issue that they spent so many years fighting the Liberals on. I think that's a bad tactical move, and I don't think that's fair to the teachers that wanted a more progressive government. I disagree, and I'm open. I've been critical of the federal NDP when it's wrong and various provincial NDPs, and I think that's a mistake by the BC NDP. That's my viewpoint. And not even a mistake politically. It's the wrong thing to do. It's both bad tactically and bad, morally, if you will. No, telecommunications didn't really come up tonight, unless when I was tweeting I missed something. The 4 big themes were the economy, Indigenous relations, the environment, and foreign affairs. And I think Singh did well on all 4 fronts, but telecommunications wasn't one of the factors that came up. Um, I think that's a more important issue than even Jagmeet is making it, and I think he should be bolder. But I do think that it's something that really matters. Like, I've noted this on this channel, like having good internet and affordable internet. It's basically a human right now. It's like you need the internet. Like, after your heat and your water and your electricity, it's like you need internet more than, like, it's right up there with those things. So I think any way to provide cheaper and more accessible access to the internet should be a fundamental goal for any progressive party that wants to help, working class and poor people. Yeah, Purple, I mean, like, constitutional reform is possible, but one of the additional challenges, let's say, for instance, there's broad acceptance that we want to make so I'm just going to get a drink right here. There's broad acceptance that we want to make a investment in healthcare at a federal level, and we want a federal plan. And most of the provinces can agree. Enough to get us to the 7 plus 50, like, the 77 provinces, 51% rule. But what happens if we start that debate and then somebody else is like, okay, I support that, but I also want this. I want the federal government to give my province more powers. I want greater control over fisheries, or I want greater control over energy, or I want greater control over immigration, and on and on and on and on and on. Like, I don't know what the particular issues are. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, well, I won't back the deal unless you also give me this. And then other provinces will be like, wait. I don't like that. If you give them that, then I'm out for everything. And this is the fear. Opening it up on one issue will inevitably let other issues in. And so there's a concern about that. And no government is willing to spend the political capital to do it, right? I don't see it happening very, very. I don't think it's very likely to happen. Yeah, I mean, people bring up the telecoms. You guys are 100% right. I've noted this on the channel. I mean, uh, access to internet, access to telecommunications is a human right, and we've basically been gouged for so long about it. I do think that Jagmeet's plan is good and is going to help, but I do feel the ultimate solution is we need a federal crown corporation to run telecommunications. I don't know if you need to ban all the other companies. I don't know if that's the answer. I do think that a federal crown corporation to compete with the private sector ones and to offer services to those who need it at a non-profit basis is it should be something the NDP considers. I don't know if that's going to be on the docket this time, but it's something we should consider. Going a little bit beyond just finding a way to make the bills cheaper, challenging the underlying profit motives of these parasitic companies is something I think we need to do a little bit more. Purple, it's not so much that they were like an omnibus. It's more like, okay, let's say there's a broad agreement that like healthcare is broken, and the reason it's broken is because the provinces don't have the economies of scale to run it, and we're going to run it from the federal government. Now, right now, that wouldn't happen. It would not happen. But let's say hypothetically it does happen. And you could say that, say, 8 of the provinces, adding up to, say, 75-80% of the population, agree. And we open up the debate. And then one of the provinces that agrees thinks, this is my opportunity to maybe get a little bit more of something. But then by saying that, other provinces start making demands. And there's a chance that while hypothetically they all originally agree on that deal, the little devil on the shoulder of all these provinces seeing this as an opportunity to get a little bit more of something else, even though they all disagree on that, could queer the whole deal. And that's what I think some people worry about, is what else gets opened when even you talk about the issue everybody agrees on. Like, what happens about, what if, for instance, like hypothetically, what if they were like, for instance, like, you wanted to abolish the Senate too. Like, but then not all the provinces supported that. Or like, what if one of the provinces had like a right-wing government that's like, I want to make Canada a unilingual country. I want to ban French as an official language federally. And then of course Quebec's going to be like, well, like frig that. And like all of that could happen. And it could start with the process being opened by even a broad agreement about, say, one particular issue like healthcare. Maybe I'm being skeptical, but this is what I think scares governments from getting involved in that process. Pepsi, the drink of a new generation. I mean, I'm sorry. I am what I am. I'm a big fan of Coke Zero. I don't know what to tell you. This might be the end of our relationship. So what I'm thinking. So Vahab, you ask about electoral reform without referendum. Is there no charter infringement? And my perspective is that you don't need a constitutional method of change. You don't need to reform the Constitution, nor do you need a referendum. We have had different electoral systems in this country before, and they've always been changed by legislation in the respective provinces. Some provinces used to have multi-member ridings, for instance. And some provinces briefly had like ranked ballots in some places. We've never had a proportional system in Canada, I don't believe, but we have had alternatives to first past the post in some provinces for some times, at some times. And the reality is that as long as the proportional system is contained in the provinces and does not mess with the existing formula to divide seats between the provinces, you do not likely need constitutional change. So what I mean by that is, if we were a one big country without without provinces, then a proportional system would spread the votes out across the whole country. But that would violate our constitution, because some provinces are guaranteed a minimum amount of seats based on constitutional provisions. So if you have a proportional system, the proportionality cannot cross provincial borders. That's my interpretation. So for instance, if there was a proportional system, it would be proportional within each province. So if New Brunswick has 10 seats and 70% of, or 50% of New Brunswick votes for the Liberals, 30% for the Conservatives, 20 for the 10 for the Greens and 10 for the NDP, well, then it would be 5-3, 5-4-2-2, or whatever it is. I didn't remember my numbers. Even though that might not reflect the broad proportionality, it would. Our system might not have full proportionality when you look at the general results, but it would be much closer. To have a fully national proportional system would likely create issues, because it might be seen as infringing upon provinces' rights to minimum amounts of seats. But as long as you keep it within one border, you don't need to. And there's nothing there's nothing constitutional that guarantees a certain electoral system. So I don't think you need that. I don't think you need a referendum. I think if a government runs on electoral reform, they have the right to implement a new system. I don't think you need a referendum. Yeah, Skeptical, you make a great point. Now, I'm not a fan of ranked ballots in the provincial and federal levels, because it doesn't solve the issue. It doesn't solve the issue of representative government. It doesn't solve most of the issues. Ranked ballots are perhaps in some ways better than first past the post, but not by a whole lot. But ranked ballots work really well in municipal politics where there are no parties, because you can't have proportionality if there's no formal organization of groups of people. So the way proportionality works in, say, mixed member proportional is you elect your local MPs, and then the results of all those local elections add up to a vote total, and then the proportional seats are redistributed parties that were underrepresented based on the local elections. And then it leads to a largely representative model, not always perfectly, but frequently. Municipally, how could you do that? How could you decide who got the proportional support? That's why ranked ballots at the municipal level are good. They're also good at the municipal level because, like in a city like Toronto, there are some wards where like 30 people run. So the winner might get like 21%, 15% of the vote and end up winning because it's first past the post. So if you have like 30 people running for a municipal, oh, sorry about that, guys, 30 people running for a municipal seat in somewhere like Toronto, then a ranked ballot is the best model because you'll have to get more support from people than you would under a current system. A ranked ballot is not a good system at the federal and provincial levels. It keeps a lot of the flaws of first past the post. I do listen to Sandy and Nora, not religiously, if I'm being honest. I don't listen to every episode. I have like so much other media I consume, but I do listen to them. I've often recommended them to people. They are a good podcast. I haven't seen the specific ones on student unions, but I am a fan, and I'm a big. I've read stuff written by both Sandy and Nora, so I would recommend that podcast to most Canadians on the left looking to learn about things, and they talk about different things than I do. And they have a different perspective. Like they have a different perspective about their lived experiences, but also Nora living in Quebec as an Anglophone gives a really interesting perspective on Quebec that most Canadians in English Canada don't see. So I think like it's a good podcast to listen to. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, municipal politics. I think where there are no parties, the ranked ballot system, way to go. That's my perspective there. Um, Unifor is very interesting. I am very critical of the Unifor leadership. I don't know if you guys saw my video I posted a few weeks ago where I said Justin Trudeau has no place at a union meeting, and I called out the Unifor leadership. It's one thing I can disagree, but under another to be a liberal union, and I have no time for that. But as Skeptical notes, Unifor activists are some of the best trade unionists. Grassroots rank and file Unifor people will be there for you. They're good, hardworking people. And so when the postal workers went on strike, if you read Mike Palasek, who was president of CUPW at the time, he noted that he reached out for support from Jerry Diaz, and he didn't reach back. But I know that in local postal worker picket lines all across this country, I saw pictures of uniform people on basically every line. So there's a disconnect there. There's a disconnect. And I have great respect for the grand history of the auto workers. They are one of Canada's great historical unions. But Unifor, I can't say I stand by their leadership's policies right now. And I do think that they are at fault in the whole debacle with the CLC. I feel that they were a union that was raiding fellow CLC members like ATU and like Unite Here. And they have their perspective. And I know no one is ever 100% right in these things, but I feel they were generally in the wrong. And so I think Unifor hopefully will have a shift of philosophy in the coming years, both in regards to politics, but also their place within the House of Labor. And I hope they come back. Purple, you're asking how did Sheer do? Don't worry about that. I mean, certainly this is a longer stream. I'll probably be wrapping up in about 15 minutes or so. I think I'll go 2 hours tonight. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I can always rehash things. And of course, these always go up as on-demand videos afterwards. So you always have the ability to watch them after. One thing to note about Sheer is I felt tonight he wasn't great. No, like I felt Singh one tonight. And I don't think, and again, I'm biased, but I don't think, but like a lot of people agreed with me. I think social media was in agreement and the panelists were in agreement. And I think further to that, Sheer had a rough one because I think his views are bad and it's hard to defend objectively bad views. But then also he seemed like he was often under attack by especially Singh, but often May. And whereas I think Singh balanced it really well between attacking Trudeau, who wasn't there, and Scheer, who was there. Scheer went to Trudeau far too often, and it didn't work. Like Singh, I think, had a better intuitive balance. Justin Trudeau was not there, but needed to be referenced because he is the prime minister. But you couldn't focus on him because you have two other people on that stage who are competing for the people watching. And I don't think Scheer struck that balance. He did sometimes attack the Greens and the NDP here and there, but they were not really. He wasn't really. I didn't feel like he did it with conviction. And I think most of the time he was just talking about, Justin Trudeau did this, Justin Trudeau did that, Justin Trudeau didn't do this, Justin Trudeau didn't do that. All very fair, but way too much of that for a guy who wasn't there. Yeah, I mean, Purple, some people don't put up their streams. I've heard some things like they don't get good retention rates and things like that. These are things I got to look at as I try to grow this channel. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll have to explore that. But for now, at least, I put up all my streams. I don't know if I'll change that policy, but I right now, I don't think I'll do that. My streams go up for people to watch. If they want to watch them, they can. If I do start to see that, more frequent streaming and me putting them up hurts my retention rates and things like that, maybe I'll have to re-explore things. But on the whole, my current policy is I want to keep them on demand for people. Somebody says, Monocle asks, just got in from work. What did I miss? I mean, well, you missed most of this stream. Of course, you'll be able to get on the back end when it goes up later. But we talked about the debate. I think Jagmeet Singh won. Elizabeth May, I felt I don't agree with her positions, and I felt like on some of the issues she was weak, but very polished performance. Andrew Scheer, I don't think, had a very good debate. I think Justin Trudeau made a mistake in not being there tonight. That's my general take. Other than that, we've been taking specific questions, talked a little bit about U.S. politics, talked about how I do not like Andrew Yang, how I do like Bernie Sanders. Apparently, somebody says Joe Biden's teeth are falling out. I don't know about this. I'll have to go Google that after. That's basically what we've been talking about. I mean, Purple, I think you make a good point there that like doing some of these things for the cameras to energize their base. Like conservatives will often do these things, not for the general public, but for like the 25 to 30% of hardcore conservatives. And that works for 3.5 years of every 4-year cycle, because that energizes conservative members and gets them to donate a ton of money. And the conservatives are the best fundraisers. But during an actual election, you actually have to appeal to the extra 10 to 15% the conservatives need to win. And I don't know if Scheer did that tonight. I don't think it was enough. Yeah, Andrew, like, noting the legitimacy of the other parties, and I think it added legitimacy to those parties. And I think, again, one thing I noted earlier on was that this was the biggest benefit tonight. The biggest upside tonight was for Jagmeet Singh, not only because he's the new leader and he's got, expectations were low, fairly or not, but that because Trudeau wasn't there, Singh could portray himself as the anti-Scheer. Like, I am the anti-Scheer. No one else is the anti-Scheer. It's me all day. And he did that successfully. Vahab, you asked, do you think Trudeau's skipping tactically? I don't know. My inkling is no. I think Paul Wells, when he opened the debate, made it very clear that Justin Trudeau was invited but chose not to come, and he was criticized for it. And I think that was an effective criticism by the moderator, that like Trudeau chose not to be here, and that was a bad thing. And I would say that on the whole, Canadians who watched it were probably disappointed he wasn't there. But Trudeau might think, look, I have a lead. Me being on this stage is just going to get me attacked, and there's no benefit. And I don't think that's fair. I think that's disrespectful to voters, but that is what it is. And I also think that the one thing is, if potentially, I don't know if Canadians will think this, but if Canadians felt none of them looked good tonight, if they felt Scheer and Singh and May were all bad, then maybe everyone's going to be like, well, Trudeau is my default pick. And maybe that was his tactic too. But I don't know. I think it was a mistake for him not to be there. And I think one of the big mistakes, and I noted this on social media, and I noted this in my video where I talked about Trudeau skipping the debates. This has given an opportunity to Jagmeet Singh that Trudeau didn't have to give. If Trudeau's there tonight, Jagmeet Singh has way less space to do what he did and impress people. Now Singh, I think, and who knows how people are going to react, but I think he's got some momentum now. And I think that's going to be a little bit dangerous to Trudeau. Omar asks, did Trudeau or did Singh mention the taxes on the 1%? And not that often. One thing I noted earlier on the stream was that if one criticism of Singh tonight, it's that when he was asked oh, to pay for things, Singh should have cited that $70 billion. We're going to get $70 billion over 10 years on the wealth tax alone. And then say, then we have capital gains, and then we have income, and then we have corporate taxes, and then closing CRA loopholes, and hit all those points. And if he did that, it would have been a stronger retort. That was a weakness there. But what Singh did really well tonight, which he's done less of, is saying look, between buying the pipeline and corporate subsidies, there's almost $20 billion that we could shift towards healthcare, dental care, childcare, whatever. And so he said, it's not just about raising taxes, it's about shifting priorities away from 1% and towards towards regular people. And he did do that, and that was effective. Yeah, Will, I totally agree that, it was disrespectful, but it did give Jagmeet a bit of a lifeline. Does Jagmeet have a long, honest, legit chance of winning PM? I mean, it depends what you mean. If the polls right now are to be believed and the election was tomorrow, then no. But elections can be very volatile, and I literally will not count that out. I would say the most likely option is that Jagmeet Singh has a good election, because I think he's going to run a good campaign, but that he is going to help form a minority government, but that I think in the next election, Canadians will warm up to him and be electing him. Now, I'm not counting that out, but that's me as a political observer. I think it's too much for Singh to jump to prime minister immediately, but I don't think it's the realm of possibility that he has a good election and people are very impressed and give him a shot next time around. Remember, Jack Layton never got to be prime minister. He might have been if he didn't have that tragic cancer, right? But Jack Layton took a long time to get to second place. He took 4 elections and almost 10 years. And so it can take time to get the trust of people when you're not in the big two parties. And I think Jagmeet, if he has a decent election, should get another chance to go after. In terms of candidate nominations, I'm not worried. The NDP will nominate enough candidates to run in all the ridings. And if we're being honest, look, I have a great candidate here in Kingston, but I vote NDP no matter where I am, no matter the candidate. And most people do not vote for local candidates. They don't. Political science analysis has shown in most countries that the local candidate matters to 2 to 5% of the vote. If you have a star in a particular riding, or a really, really bad candidate, like a scandal-ridden candidate, you might have a bigger effect. But the local candidate, frankly, guys, doesn't matter nearly as much as we would like to think. It's the truth, which is why everyone's like, we don't technically elect the prime minister, we elect our MPs, and then they elect the prime minister. All of that is constitutionally valid, but in effect, we elect the prime minister. We do. We're voting for the party leaders, and the names on the ballot are just people who are there, and like that is how the vast majority of people approach politics, even if that's not constitutionally how it actually is. So the candidates will be on the ballot. It doesn't like this is an issue every election for the NDP, and like we always figure it out. Don't worry about it. 70 cents if you don't just to recap it. May calling out Singh on LNG. I think Jagmeet took a nuanced position, which is a good one. Jagmeet, I don't think can really ban LNG. He doesn't have the constitutional power to do that. What Jagmeet suggested is that he would ban subsidies to fossil fuel companies, including LNG, and by so doing, I think demonstrate that he's shifting priorities and he can move that money towards green energy, towards social programs. And again, I have to underline this. The Green Party in BC, both provincially and federally, has attacked the NDP, both provincially and federally, on Site C and LNG, but they provincially have the balance of power until they decide to defeat the NDP government and put BC in another election. The Green Party owns that policy too. They do. That is Green Party policy as much as it is NDP party policy. Because if they really wanted to, they could end BC governments right now. And they could say, look, we're going to go to the polls. And when we win, we're going to ban fracking in BC and we're going to end Site C or what have you. And the Green Party isn't doing it for a couple reasons. And I think one, maybe they actually support Site C and LNG secretly, but know that they can't do that electorally. Or maybe it's because they don't think they can win an election. Or maybe it's because it's not a priority issue. Again, you might say, well, why would the Green Party do that? The cooperation's working it. And you'd be right. But again, as I noted earlier in the stream, the Green Party has flexed its muscle to stop the NDP from making it easier for people to unionize. Why are they not doing it with LNG and Site C? They could, but they're not. Call the government down. Until then, I have no time for Greens trying to politicize Site C and LNG because it's their policy too. So, guys, the questions are sort of drying up, and we are approaching 2 hours. Any last questions? Filter them through, and I'm probably going to wrap up. If you have a question you were saving, down now, and then I'll give it an answer. A few things before I go and I answer those questions. One, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Again, there was 55 people here now, which is less than we had before, but many of my previous streams would have peak concurrence in the high 40s, low 50s. To have consistently people, 50, 60, 70 people, this makes it by far my most successful stream. I know that might be modest compared to some of your other favorite streamers, but for me, this is a sort of new record, so I really appreciate that. I will be doing streams probably for every debate, or at least most debates. And again, every Wednesday at 8 p.m. from now until the Wednesday following the election, I'm going to be doing a live stream where we're going to be talking about what happened over the previous week, debates, narratives, policies, all of those sorts of things, scandals, and we'll go over that. If you want to support the channel, the biggest thing you can do is what you've already been doing. You can watch the channel, share the content, like it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed, do all of those sorts of things. You have the ability to support me on Patreon. If you just look up Christo Avalis, and type in Patreon, it'll come up. Supporting me there helps to improve the quality of the channel. This fancy new microphone, which I think sounds better, happened because of my Patreon supporters. I used to have a much lower quality setup on that end. And I will be getting a new camera in the near future as well because of that. So if you want to support that kind of things, Patreon's a great place to do it. During live streams as well, you can give money via Super Chat. The thing with that, some of the bigger channels will only read Super Chat comments. I don't try to do that, but if you want to support me in that way, you have the ability as well. Other than that, I'm going to finish these questions and then we're going to head out. Actually, let me know, guys. Did you guys for those who have listened to my streams and my videos before, did you find the audio quality noticeably better this time? In my tests, I did think it was better, but I'd like to know what you guys think. Maybe on streams, the stream is of a lower quality than video recorded, but let me know what you think. I want to hear that. Okay, so some people say it's noticeably better. Some people are saying that it's that they can't notice. No one's saying it's worst, which I think is important. I definitely have to also tweak the settings. I think if I'm going to look up settings tweaks, I'm going to talk to David Dole to see how he set up his mic. But I'm glad to see that even just me I set this up while watching the debate. So if this is better right now, I'm sure I can make it even better going forward. Um, uh, One thing to know here, a couple last questions. Some people said I can't give you money if I was poor. If I wasn't so poor, I'd give more money. Look, I get it. We're all struggling. We're all working hard, all that. I don't begrudge anybody who isn't able to support me. The biggest way people support me is by watching the content and sharing it around with people they think will like it. That's literally, if you do that, you're going to be doing much more, because at the end of the day, when you're a small channel like mine, the thing you need to do is grow. So if you want to watch and share the content that gets my channel, my channel in front of more eyeballs, that costs nothing, but it has great value to me and to the project I think I'm trying to launch. Okay, a couple last questions here. Some of the timing of the debate, or somebody says here, Jagmeet winning is the best option for Canada. What option is the second best? I think the best option for Canada is a Jagmeet Singh government. The best option second to that is a government that depends on Jagmeet Singh. So, for instance, the best option I would have is Jagmeet Singh as prime minister. The second best that's likely is Justin Trudeau to be prime minister, but require Jagmeet Singh's support of him and his MPs to run the parliament. That's the second best option. Do you think it was intentional to include the debates on the same night as the debate in the USA, knowing less eyeballs would be there? Where left eyeballs would go there? I don't know about that. That's an interesting question. Some people were saying, like, look, there was even the debate was criticized because it's college football or something tonight. I don't know. I don't watch college US sports. Big sports guy, but I don't watch NCAA. So people were like, why did they schedule it tonight? I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if there was an ideological goal to schedule it tonight. It might have just been 5 debates to schedule during the election when they could all find a slot, when they wanted to go, and when all the leaders could agree to be there. And this just happened to be the day that Maclean's could get done. And so it could have been nothing more than standard scheduling. I wouldn't read anything into it without seeing evidence to do so. Big sports guy, watch EPL. Not so much EPL. Big soccer fan, big TFC fan. I've big TFC fan, Toronto FC. Watch a lot of international soccer. Big fan of the Canadian team and also the Greek team. My father's from Greece. I of Greek descent. So, watch the fan of the Leafs. Don't hate me. Might have lost some fans there. Fan of the Blue Jays, the Raptors. Toronto sports guy. Love the Olympics, for instance, winter and summer. Basically, when the Olympics are on, I basically just go into like hermit mode and watch Olympics for 2 weeks. This may or may not become an Olympics channel. When the Olympics are on. I'm joking, but like you might like, who knows what'll happen then. But big sports guy. I think it's one of my hobbies. Glad to see that the audio is good. Yeah, people are like, the IOC is awful, certainly. So is FIFA, but like, what are you gonna do, right? Like, look, we have to be more moral in our consumption habits, but we also live in a society, and like, you got to live your life, right? Like, as long as you're doing your best in your day-to-day life to make your life better and your community's life better and your family's life better, then like, don't flagellate yourself because you watch, Serbia play Italy and it was a FIFA sponsored thing and you're mad at FIFA. Like, live your life, right? Like, live your life. Like, You know, it's like the whole like, but you know, it's your fault the environment is bad. It's like, no, it's capitalism's fault. And as long as you're doing your part to fight it, I don't think like you can do more than that without like, you know, becoming insane with trying to like live this virtue that's impossible to live. Right. Okay. So, yeah, the Qatar World Cup's going to be, that's going to test that's going to test my limits, but I don't know. I don't know. You're right. That Qatar World Cup's going to be a real test. Okay. So everyone, a couple, yeah. Craig says Jagmeet, more like Jug beat sheer into the ground. Am I right? That's not bad. That's not bad, Craig. I like that one. I like that one. Okay. So, that's going to be the end of this stream. I'm glad people like the new audio. Again, some people say they don't really notice a difference, but most people seem to say that they think it's better. I think once I tweak it, and I think you'll notice the quality more on recorded streams. Live streams lower the quality to make it more instantaneous. So I'm glad that you guys like the new audio quality. I think it's better personally. Like people note the way you liking the video, sharing it, things like that. Those are the algorithmic tricks that, you know, liking and commenting and subscribing helps to promote the video. If you guys can do things like that, I always appreciate it. So I will see you guys in videos pretty much every day, but the next live stream will likely be on Wednesday. If there are any other major events, I don't know when the next debate is. I don't even have it in my head. It'll maybe after that. But if there are any major events, any breaking new things, I may go for a live stream. But other than that, I'll see you guys on Wednesday live. You can follow me on social media to get more, you know, comments moment to moment. And I'll likely have at least one video out a day, talking about the election, talking about Singh, talking about whatever. So guys, have a good one, and I'll see you next time.